Most people think that God is all knowing, all powerful, and everywhere. So, if God is all knowing, and after reading Genesis 3, you should think to yourself, why? The age old reason of the Garden of Eden argues that the story is about free will. But in order to truly understand what happened there, you really have to look at intent, not free will. There were four beings in the garden: God, Adam, Eve, the serpent. Why was the creation, the children of God, placed in the same location where the serpent and the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Why were they all in the same location? Parents, with their immaturity and flaws, still care enough about their children to put child locks and electrical outlet plugs to protect the children. They tell the children about, um, things that are acceptable in behavior, or behavior that is acceptable in society, rather. And if you look at this story simply from a disobedience, then you're missing out the intent that God had for placing the serpent, the tree, Adam and Eve, all in the same location. I wrote this about a month ago, and I'm going to expound on what I'm saying. I read the Holy Bible when I was a teenager, and even joined a non-denominational church as I was looking for the truth. I thought I found the truth written in those pages. Sadly, after reading the entire Holy Bible from the book of Genesis to the book of Revelation, I couldn't believe what I found. First, I had to analyze the story of Adam and Eve, and I was left with some questions that led me to the realization I was no longer a sinner. 1. Why did God put Adam and Eve in the same garden where the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the serpent were located? 2. Why did God not protect the tree of knowledge of good and evil with an angel, for example, or a gate or something else? 3. If God knows everything, past, present, and future, did they not prevent Adam and Eve from eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? The answer is throughout the Holy Bible, over and over again. Answer: to redeem mankind through Jesus Christ. This clearly shows God's intent for disobedience. Can you not see the problem with this? This means that God not only created and allowed the conditions for sin to exist on purpose, but he did so, or they did so on purpose. This sounded like a trap to me, or a catch-22. I could not believe it. I used to believe I was a sinner. After coming to this realization, I no longer do. I am not a sinner, and the God of Abraham is the usurper. A usurper takes power illegally or by force. God intended to offer a solution for a problem they could have avoided but chose not to. The story of Adam and Eve is not about free will. It's about someone, God, knowing better but choosing not to do anything about it. Ask yourself, would you put someone in this situation as Adam and Eve on purpose? If so, why? Or why would or would you have done something about it? The usurper is not a loving God. Keep in mind what the book of Revelation says Jesus will do to those unbelievers not found in the Lamb's book of life. So I've laid out my case for why I am not a sinner. You will still argue free will, but that's because we are taught that we shouldn't question God, or that God has a plan and the ways of God are mysterious. And questioning God or God's intent, which is really the premise of this argument, not free will, but the intent that God had for allowing Adam and Eve, the serpent, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, to be all in the same location when they could have prevented it. They could have placed Adam and Eve somewhere else, for example. They could have moved the tree. They could have not allowed the serpent there. But if you argue free will, you're going to be stuck in the narrative and the answers in those pages of the Holy Bible. And it's going to be a long road for you believing that because of disobedience, sin entered the world. The other question I have for you is, sin is actually inherited from the story of Adam and Eve. Why would you inherit something that you had nothing to do with? Even in the court of law, if you are not guilty of something, then you won't be charged for the crime. But why are you being charged for the crime of sin when it seems as if what God created in the story of Adam and Eve was a template society? A template meaning this is how it's going to be for the rest of mankind. And that is also wrong, but not as wrong as my argument, which is the intent that God had. God created a problem, and they also gave a solution for that problem. And this is the trap that people are not seeing. I hope this helps you.